Welcome to the Nourished Mama podcast. I am your host, Anna Robinson, certified nutritionist and wellness coach, plus fellow mama. This podcast is here to show you that you can live your healthiest, happiest, most vibrant life as a mama. Each week, I will be sharing different nutrition, lifestyle, and mindset hacks that are going to support you in your health journey. You can expect realistic and sustainable advice, plus strategies that can easily fit into your busy life as a mama. Because without a nourished mama, there can't be a nourished home. So if you are committed to creating a life filled with vibrance for you and for the ones you love most, then you are in the right place. So let's get into today's life-changing episode. I am so excited to have Georgia on the podcast today. Georgia is a naturopath with over 25 years experience. She's the founder of WellNourished, a platform for family health and wellness. And she's also the founder of WellNourished Kids, an incredible platform that she did co-found with psychotherapist Jane Faulkner in order to help and support parents struggling with fussy eaters. Georgia, we have so much to learn from you, and I cannot wait to get into all my burning questions. But before we start, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about you. How did you get into nutrition, naturopathy, and health?
Yeah, so thank you for having me, first off. Look, it was a journey that started a long time ago. I was raised by a very health conscious mum. And my nan, who I spent all of my school holidays living with and every weekend with, because mum was a single mum. She used to work on weekends.
Wow.
And my nan was instrumental in teaching me to cook and love food, love growing food, love cooking. When I was in my early teens, or just about early teens, I developed a heart condition that baffled the medical community. The short version is I was on many medications, a lot of which did nothing to support me, and I was given a really terrible prognosis that I would probably not lead a very long life. I would definitely never be able to have children because my heart wouldn't cope with the strain of bearing children and the added blood volume of pregnancy. And I was on and off different medications for like almost a decade, actually. And it got to the point where the only drug that worked or supported me to live a fairly normal life, there was some big questions around its safety. And so I tried to come off it many times, and then I ended up seeing a naturopath, which in those days there were few and far between. There was one. I was brought up in Perth. There was one naturopath in Perth, and I went and saw her, and my whole life changed from that point onwards. I just graduated from university, and I just at that point just thought I want to help people the way that she's completely changed my life. Like, I went into remission and I've never had, touch wood, nearly 54, and I've never had an issue with my heart since then. So that's what really was the catalyst behind me becoming a naturopath. So I studied naturopathy, sacrificed another four years of my life. And the rest is history. I feel like I've been able to go on and support a lot of people through difficult health conditions where they were offered not great prognoses as well by the medical community. And that's what I really focused on when I graduated and started practicing.
Wow, what an incredible story. I didn't know that. And are you on any medication now?
Oh, no, God, no. I haven't been since I came off it. I've never, ever remitted. I've never ended up in hospital for that reason.
No symptoms at all?
No.
Wow.
No.
And I know this is going a little bit off tangent, but what was the biggest thing that she opened up your eyes to in terms of natural medicine?
Look, just that holistic health really matters. Like, I had, as I said, I was raised by a really health conscious mum, so my diet was really good. But my heart literally broke when I lost someone that was extremely important to me at that time. And I really honestly, now looking back on it, feel it was a grief response, and that my heart literally broke. So for me, she really helped me to work through the grief, even though it was nearly a decade on. And as I said, supported my nervous system, supported my cardiovascular system. It was a whole body, like she really just broke everything down in a way that made sense to me. I did what she asked me to do, which was there was herbal support, some
Yeah.
nutritional support, but mostly herbal support, homeopathic support. And yeah, that's basically where it was the answer that I was looking for. And as I said, look, I'd tried to stop my medication so many times, and I always just ended up back in hospital.
Mm.
And, at one point, pure desperation, my stepdad at that time was English. I even spent some time in the Brompton Heart and Lung Hospital, which is a specialty heart and lung hospital in London for children.
Yeah.
We really left no rock unturned, or
Mm.
they left no rock unturned. So,
Wow.
yeah.
What an
Hmm.
incredible story. Thank
Yeah,
you for sharing that, Georgia.
you're welcome.
I do find I can relate in a way because I feel like sometimes what happens, and especially as mums, I know this happened to you in your teens, but a lot of the time we wait until something really bad happens to
Yes.
support our health. And in my circumstance, I ended up developing an autoimmune condition until I started realizing, okay, I need to start focusing on my own health. I need to look at my food. I need to look at my stress levels, my nervous system.
Yep.
And something that I also want to touch on there as well is that even being a nutritionist, I solely understand the power of food and believe in the power of food. But my life didn't fully transform until I really took control of that mindset piece, which is such a big
That's it.
aspect of our health journey. And I say to a lot of my clients as well, I can give you all the meal plans, all the recipes, but unless you work on your mindset, you won't have a consistent health routine because it's your mindset that will carry you through and hold you.
Yes. Yeah.
So I love that
100%.
you touched on that as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I even went on, actually, funnily enough, to develop an autoimmune disease between my two kids as well.
Wow.
And that was again despite having an incredible diet. But I was doing the whole super mum thing, went back to work when my daughter was 5 weeks old. When I look back on it,
Wow.
I just think, God, I was nuts. I was juggling clinical practice, and my husband was working 70-hour weeks, and I just literally ran myself into the ground.
Yeah.
And then my body forced me to stop. And once again, I developed this autoimmune disease, poor prognosis, wouldn't have a second baby, all the things. And I chose that time not to take any medications and really worked not only, look, there were things that I tightened up perhaps nutritionally, not really a lot because there wasn't a
Yeah.
lot to tighten up, but 100%. We moved interstate, we moved to Queensland, had a real lifestyle change, and I focused heavily on healing and rest and all of the things that are important for mums, because unless we're healthy and happy, our kids aren't going to be either.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah, that really changed me as a young mum.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It's similar to me. I did develop that autoimmune condition and was basically told at the age of 29
Yep.
that I was going to be on medication for life.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, there is no way that's not the life I'm living. There has to be another way. And that's when I actually delved into the world of nutrition, went and studied, understood how to use food as medicine, healed my gut, rebalanced my hormones, and I've never had a flare up ever since.
Yeah,
I don't talk about this a lot on social media, but I also took medication for 3 months and never went back on it. And I'm 36, and so 29 to 36 have never taken medication. And I was told I was going to be on medication for life. There was no other option.
yeah, yeah.
So
There's always options.
there's
Always
always
options.
options.
Yeah.
And I know this is again a little bit off tangent, but I think there needs to be more research into why so many women, especially mums, are the ones that are diagnosed with autoimmune conditions.
Yeah.
I think the number is over 80%
Yeah.
now of women are diagnosed with autoimmune conditions.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things for me, the biggest eye openers for me was when I was diagnosed, it was pretty much just a phone call saying, this is what you've got, this is your script, go get your medication, and that's it. Whereas no one ever spoke to me about inflammation,
Yes.
gut health, any of those things that are
Yeah.
huge triggers of autoimmune flare-ups.
Yep.
I think it's like over 80% of autoimmune flare-ups are linked to an inflammatory response in the body. No one ever told me that. No one
It's
ever spoke
crazy,
to
isn't
me
it?
about that.
No.
So, yeah, I'm glad you touched on that as well. Now, just to go back on what we're chatting about,
On
but
track.
you have helped countless families basically simplify nutrition and eat healthier together, which is what I love. What would you say is the best place to start for a mum who is looking to do this?
Look, For me, if you don't already cook, you need to learn how to cook. Cooking for me isn't just not optional. And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect or a
No.
culinary expert. You can keep it really simple. But I think the most important thing that everyone needs to be doing is finding their way and learning how to enjoy cooking. And I really hope that my recipes and my philosophy around food supports people to do that in a really simple way. I think often I got asked the other day what sets my recipes apart, or why do you think my recipes work, or why are people drawn to my recipes? I said, I think it's because I'm not a chef
Yeah.
and I do my own dishes. So I'll always find the simplest, easiest, quickest possible way. So I think us mums are actually really great recipe developers because we
Yeah.
know that we have to find shortcuts, and I'm very good at doing that. So I think as I said, if you don't cook already, you need to learn to love to
Mm,
do it. And we've all learned. None of us were born knowing how to cook. We've all learned. And it's an
exactly.
incredible gift that you can also role model and share with your children. I also think if you're looking for an actual starting point, I know a lot of people think automatically they'll go to dinner, whereas I think breakfast is the place to start, because if you eat a decent breakfast, like a healthy, nourishing, filling, whole food based breakfast, you're going to be more motivated and feel a whole lot better throughout the day. You're not going to be snacking and reaching for sugary things. Your energy levels are going to be sustained right throughout the day. And you're going to feel more like cooking dinner than
Yeah.
if you had a crappy breakfast in the morning. So for me, breakfast, again, a lot of people just do really well with their dinners, and
Mm,
then it all falls apart at breakfast. So yeah, start
love
with
it.
breakfast. Mm,
Breakfast really is, and I know it's so cliche to say it, but it really is one of the most important meals of the
it
day,
really is.
especially for mums, I find,
Yep.
because when we're waking up first thing in the morning, our nervous system is out of whack. Our cortisol levels are really high.
Yep.
Everything we do in the morning is going to determine how the rest of our day plays out. And one of the most effective things that we can do is fill our body with whole foods, protein, healthy fats, because all of those things reduce cortisol, they satisfy our hunger, they give us the energy we need, and it's that sustained energy that will carry us through the day. So I love that you said that. And also,
And blood sugar as well,
yes,
you
yeah,
said. Yeah,
which is so important for
it really
mums.
is. Yeah.
Now, our world is filled with so much information on what to eat and what not to eat. What are some of your main tips for really understanding what's good for us and what can be necessarily bad for our health and our family's health?
Yeah, look, I don't subscribe to any food fad or particular way of eating. I feel like we are all so individual. So, what might feel really good for one person doesn't feel good for another. So, it is important for us to definitely tap in to become conscious of what we're eating and how it makes us feel. And that only happens, as I said, it's again a skill that you develop just by, as I said, tapping in. But I suppose if I were to align with a diet, it would be what I call a low HI diet, which is a low human intervention diet. So eating food as close to what nature provides as
Yeah,
possible, as real as possible, and as minimally processed as possible. And you just can't go wrong. You really can't.
yeah,
Just think of what your grandparents would have been eating before there
yes,
were supermarkets and before there was this industrialization of our food chain,
yeah,
and going back to our roots and just keeping it simple, as I said,
yeah. I
keeping it
love
simple,
that.
eating with the seasons, if possible, if that's available to you. And yeah, just eating what, like I look at the diet my nan we used to eat. It was pretty basic,
Yeah, yeah,
but always had some sort of good quality protein, always some sort of veg with it, albeit often overcooked compared to the way I eat it
yeah.
now. My nan used to boil the buggery out of beans. I don't know why. But yeah, it was still, we still made cakes, but I
Mm,
just feel like year by year our food system just ventures further and further away. I feel like the things that we ate as children,
mm.
even processed foods, they're
Oh,
very different now.
very
Very
different.
different.
Yeah, yeah. Something I tell my clients to do is when you go to the grocery store, focus on 80 to 90% of your trolley just being simple whole foods,
Yeah.
foods in their natural state.
Yeah.
If 80 to 90% of your trolley is
Yeah.
that, you're winning.
Amazing.
And it's so hard, and we'll get into kids and all that stuff around food and packaged foods. But at the end of the day, there are so many foods on the supermarket shelves that we want to believe are not harming our health, but the reality is they are. So we need to have a really good understanding of this. And sometimes just even interpreting an ingredients list can feel like a science experiment. And something I say to people is it's trying to find that right balance. When you focus too much on restriction, that can also be really damaging towards your relationship with food and your kids' relationship with food. But when you switch that around and say, I'm just going to focus on adding in more of the good stuff, more of the natural stuff, more of the whole foods, that's where you can really start transforming your mindset around food. And even just having that food accessible in your home, you're opening your fridge and it's full of veggies and fruits, and there's fruits and veggies on your bench top. Kids seeing that makes such a big impact to your whole family's health,
Yeah.
just making it normal.
Yeah, my teenagers always open the pantry, and if they're in a mood, they'll often say, "Oh my God, we just live in an ingredients only house." Which we
That's
don't. I do buy supermarket, like I've got a freezer full of things that I've made, but I also do buy supermarket snacks
yeah,
and things that as backstops. There is plenty more than ingredients in our pantry. Obviously,
yeah,
the
yeah,
kids aren't always happy with the choices that I make. We compromise, and like you
yeah,
said, it is that 80-20. You've got
yeah,
you good, better, best. And
exactly.
one thing I'm really proud of in parenting my kids, I've definitely not done everything perfectly by a long shot, but they both have a really great understanding of food, how it makes them feel,
Yeah,
and they have an incredible knowledge of health and a really healthy relationship with food. We
yeah,
don't have foods that are off limits in our house, but they just naturally don't come into
yeah,
our house. They
yeah.
just aren't part of the equation. So
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's what it comes down to, making sure that fruits, vegetables, and whole foods are normal to them from
yes,
such a young age,
yeah,
which is so important when we're thinking about what we're actually buying at the grocery store, not so much about what we shouldn't be buying, but what we
sure,
should be buying and
yeah,
adding in.
yeah,
Yeah.
and crowding out. If you can crowd out that need for, I know if I've eaten or my kids have eaten a really good solid breakfast or a good solid meal, there's no room, there's no desire for
Yeah.
anything more than that. We crowd out those unhealthy choices just
Yes.
naturally by having a good quality meal.
Yeah, and that also
Mm,
goes back to starting to cook more at home,
definitely.
and even just understanding how to build those balanced meals, which is
Yes,
so important as well.
definitely.
And it doesn't have to be fancy, as
No.
long as you've got some protein, some carbohydrates, some veggies, fruits,
Yes.
healthy fats.
Yep.
That is how you satisfy your hunger, your children's hunger, and they're not
Yes.
asking for a snack 20 minutes later,
Absolutely.
which is, yeah.
It's
And
a
that all comes down to
cardinal sign that the meal hasn't been nutritionally balanced if someone's hungry an hour after eating a meal, really.
exactly. Yeah. I know your kids are a little older now, but can
Yep.
you share some of the challenges that you may be faced with feeding your family and how you were able to overcome these when they were a bit smaller?
Yeah. Look, my biggest challenge, I really reflected on this question because I couldn't, like everything else that you had mentioned that you were going to run by me, I was like, oh yeah, bang, 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 didn't
Yeah.
have to give it a lot of thought. This one, I was like, what were the challenges? And for me, look, not having any family support was a challenge without a
Yeah.
doubt, but we lived semi remotely. So we didn't have a supermarket or a shop that wasn't a mission, basically. So
Yeah.
if I forgot ingredients, I had to be very prepared. And it was actually a really good thing in the long run because I was forced into being prepared for meals, having a well stocked fridge, pantry. We had a massive walk in pantry when we built the house, so we knew where we were building it. So we made sure we had lots of shelf space for
Yeah.
stocking up. So I used to bulk buy everything nuts, seeds, grains. Like I never run out of anything. I had a system around never. I always have backups. And then when the backups are
Preparation
gone,
is, yeah,
preparation
it
was
is everything.
absolutely key, and that has continued right the way through. I post a lot of me packing my son's lunches now, which are just, he's 17, he's an elite athlete. He literally takes an esky full of food to school every day. 2 big bento lunch boxes, then usually a meal on the side, and then something like a chia pudding. Like, he has a lot of food. And I often post the lunches, and parents of younger kid mums are like, "Oh my God, is this what we've got?" Well, I'm like, "Well, yeah, you know." But those lunches, sometimes people get nasty with me, and not very often, but they're like, "Oh my God, they must take you hour we don't all have hours in the morning to do." I've timed myself many times and even done live packing lunches. Never spend more than 10 minutes max. I can, on a bad day, on a good day, sorry, I can pack a lunchbox in 5 minutes because I'm prepared. And that's a whole food lunchbox, 100% whole food lunchbox. And as I said, I do have backups, but preparation really was the challenge for me, learning how to be prepared. Because before I had kids, I actually didn't bake. I learned how to bake with my nan, but it's not something that I did in the meantime. And then once I had kids and they wanted tiny teddy biscuits or something, I wanted to be able to make, like, I started making my own tiny teddy my own versions and stuff. So, yeah, look, preparation was a challenge, and one that I'm really proud to say that I've overcome, and has really shaped me to be able to lead a healthy life really simply and easily.
Yeah. And you know what? At the end of the day, the hard truth is that there is always time. And
Yes.
I get a lot of pushback on that as well because I share not every day goes to plan, but I share myself exercising, doing my meditations, making whole food meals, preparing lunch boxes for the kids and things like that. And I often do get that backlash, and I get it. We all have different priorities, and I have that. I'm lucky that I'm able to work from home. But at the end of the day, I work a lot of hours.
Me
But
too.
if I know that I've got a really big day, I've got a lot of after school activities with the kids, then I'll wake up earlier and do it. And
Yeah.
this is the hard truth. And I never want to offend anybody because it always comes from a place of love. But if you're a mum and you're in the trenches, you feel like there's no time. Sometimes you just need to step back, reassess your whole day, and then start preparing. Think about that preparation that you can make ahead of time. And I promise you, if you just step back and look at your days, think about the small things that you can do that make a massive impact to the rest of your week. For me, for example, is I'm not a big batch cooker. I've never liked batch cooking,
Yep.
but what I'll do on a Sunday is I'll do little things. So sometimes I'll poach 2 chicken breasts that I know I can use in the kids' lunches. I'll make a big sheet of roasted veggies that I can use for my lunches. I'll wash and clean all the fruit and veg and the salad stuff. It's stuff like that that makes such a big difference to your entire week. And there is always time for that at
Yeah.
the end of the day. There's
Look,
always time.
yeah, and like you said, it is about prioritizing your health. And I think the gift of suffering with an illness in your lifetime
Yeah.
is that health just becomes a priority. It's a non-negotiable. And
Yeah.
I saw a beautiful quote not that long ago that said, when you're healthy, you have thousands of worries. When you're
Yeah.
not healthy, you only have one worry, and that's your
Yeah.
health. And that is 1000% true because, as I said, I've lived a lot of years where my health was not good.
Mm.
And yeah, so health is
It's
100% a priority for me. I don't
yeah,
ever wish for anyone to have to spend a minute in hospital, let alone
I
weeks and
know.
months of their life. Yeah, yeah, it
And
is. It's
even
important.
yeah, it's nothing like a health scare to really shake you
Yes,
and really understand what health means to you. And the biggest message for me is always I want to share my journey in order to stop that in someone else's tracks.
totally.
Make sure that someone else doesn't go through that because reality is that it is extremely common for mums to go through burnout, develop an autoimmune condition,
Yep.
and be given a lifetime prognosis. The reality of that is unfortunately extremely common. So for me, if I can share that journey and make sure that I'm helping people before they get to that point, it's so important. But you have to take action.
Yes,
And that's what I always say. At the end of the day, as a mum, you are your biggest advocate. No one else can make this time for you, but you've got to ask for help. You've got to demand help
yes,
and make sure you prioritize your own well-being.
yeah. Like that saying of fitting the oxygen mask to yourself first. You're
Yes.
no good to anyone if
Yeah.
you're unwell yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I said, I know that autoimmune diagnosis for me was a huge wake-up call, because I
Yeah.
thought I'm naturally someone that has a lot of energy, a lot of vitality, and I can go and go and go. And even now, at my age, I go and go and go. So for me, my challenge is rest. For me, I
Yes.
can do all the things. I can cook all the meals. I can do all the exercise. I've got no issues with any of that, because I
Mm.
rarely feel tired. But yeah,
It's knowing when your body also needs the rest.
yeah, absolutely. I'm getting better at it. It's only taken me 50 odd years, but I am getting
Yeah.
better at that.
And it's also about finding that balance between challenging yourself and knowing when you need rest,
Yeah.
which is so important as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, we've gone on a bit of a tangent
Love a
again, me
tangent.
and you. But something I want to ask you about is you have some incredible experience around fussy eating and feeding our toddlers and young children. Can you share some tips and strategies around this? Because I know there are probably so many mums that will benefit from hearing some of your strategies around this.
Yeah. Look, it started for me when I was in clinical practice, my practice was located very near the main children's hospital in Perth, and I saw a lot of unwell children. And the one thing that they had in common was that they either had very poor, highly processed diets or very restricted diets. There were only a very small selection of foods that they would actually eat. As someone who actually, when I first started practicing, I didn't have kids. So
Yeah.
I didn't have that firsthand kind of exposure to children and how to go about treating them, but it was a big lesson in upskilling. And then when I had my own kids, I learned very quickly that the way that my kids ate was not normal. In that they were pretty accepting across most foods. Like my son's favourite food when he was probably 2, I remember him chucking a tantrum at the butcher because he asked what I was doing at the butcher, and I said buying some meat for dinner, and he screamed that he wanted chili mussels for dinner. He's got this 2-year-old flailing about saying he wanted chili mussels for dinner. And my daughter also, I can remember being in a French restaurant actually, and she would have been about 2 at the time. My husband ordered snails.
Wow.
And there's not a lot in snails. It's quite like a small, tiny little portion. So the
Yeah.
snails come and went very quickly. And yeah, next thing she's again flailing around screaming that she wanted more snails. But yeah, I figured out that my kids weren't normal, and I really started to examine what I did that was different to what other parents were doing. Again, no judgment, just how I did things. And I had this burning desire to share everything, but I felt like there was a big missing piece of the puzzle. Like I had expertise in one part of the picture, but not the other part, which was the behavioural and the boundary kind of side of things. So much further down the track, I actually teamed up with a psychotherapist who works with youth justice kids, and she works with kids that are not in a great place. And we both wanted to be able to help parents from the get-go. Like she wanted to rewind the clock. So we put together a very comprehensive program called Raising Well-Nourished Kids. And I feel like it's incredibly valuable, but it's complex.
Yeah.
Raising well-nourished kids is not straightforward, but there are plenty of simple things that parents can do. So just a few kind of non-negotiables for your audience would be that we need to educate our children around food. They're not born understanding food. In fact, they're hardwired to be quite skeptical of a lot of food. There's a term for it. It's called neophobia. And a lot of kids actually, when they're very young, a lot of parents will report they were great eaters and then they got to 2 or to 3. There's always a point at which things went pear-shaped. And so we need to be able to expose our kids to foods before they even hit the dinner table. I know we live semi-rurally, so for my kids, they were involved in growing food at the time, which is ideal. Although I completely understand, like I live on a tiny little 400 square metre block now, and I know how hard it is to grow anything. But there are many ways that you can do that, and growing is one of many, and we run through all of the different ways in the program. But even just discussing food, one of the things my kids love doing is playing a game, and we do this on the long drive home from school every day. We'd have a little quiz of, was it a fruit, a vegetable, or a fruit or a vegetable? That was as basic as it it started, and we just started discussing whether things, and I'd shout out something and my kids would say that's a fruit or a vegetable. Then we sometimes would talk about, does it grow on a tree or a vine or underground?
Yes.
Really basic things that are just can be, as I said, we do this in the car on the way home from
Yeah.
school of an afternoon. Food needs to be joyful, pleasurable, fun. I think so many parents, there's so much emotion around food, and it really is a trap. Our responsibility as parents is to provide the food that we want our kids to eat, and it is their responsibility to eat it, if and how much they eat.
I
But
find that so scary, the thought of that.
yeah,
But it really is about letting go of that control.
it
It's,
really
it's your
is.
job to provide the
Yep,
food. It's their job to eat it.
it really
I
is.
often see the spoonfuls going in and again, no judgment, but you just want to go, no, just let them experience the food.
Yes.
Even if 5% of that food gets into their mouth and the rest is on the floor on their body, that is an experience for them. That is building a positive relationship with food for them, rather than you putting the mouthful in, distracting them with the TV, with the phone. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
hard to watch that.
Yeah, it is. Probably a piece of advice that I was given as a young mum, and it was nothing to do with food, but I felt it really did apply to food. I think this well-meaning lady was actually talking about me like doing things like ironing my husband's business shirts at the start of the week. But she said to me, start as you intend to continue. And as I said, she was referring to me, if I started ironing my husband's shirts now, I'd be doing it for the rest of my life. But I also took that approach with my kids. And there was a time, as I said, I was back at work when my daughter was 5 weeks old. And I
Yeah.
had this pressure of having a waiting room full of people that were paying good money to have my full attention and my full focus in a consultation. And I took that responsibility really seriously. And I had a wait list of people waiting to see me. I couldn't afford not to be switched on. I couldn't afford to be unwell or not turn up to work. And so I can remember a time when my daughter was little and started pushing back on eating, and me panicking and thinking, oh my God, she's not going to, telling myself all these stories. If I don't get enough food into her, then she's going to sleep through the night, and I've got to be at work, and I've got an 8-hour day of consultations and pumping breast milk in between. And
Yeah.
it was crazy, as I said, when I look back on it. But I told myself that all those stories. And I remember one day setting her up in front of the TV and dancing around trying to shove food in her mouth. And then I caught myself and I thought, oh my God, this just isn't sustainable. I can't sustain this. And obviously changed my ways. And you know what? There wasn't a single occasion where she went to bed without hardly eating anything, where she did wake up. It just didn't happen. But
They will
sorry,
eat when they're hungry.
they really would. She'd wake up and she'd have a massive
yeah.
breakfast. Yeah.
And it's honestly as simple as that. They will eat when they're hungry. It is as simple as
100%.
that. And if you follow that mantra and just let them do their thing, they will eat when they're hungry.
Yeah, they really will. Another thing as well, I think that's a really important missing piece of the puzzle, is that our children crave connection. And one place that they connect with us and they have our sole focus and our sole attention is when we're sitting down to dinner. And kids do as we do, not as we say. And if they're sitting there and watching, I've heard of people who work with young children who have difficulty chewing. They've never seen their parents chew because they sit by themselves and eat dinner. And I understand it's not always possible when they're really young and dad's getting home later and mum wants to eat with dad. But we have to find a way to share family meals, because family meals matter on so many different levels. And to this day, our family sits together. It's not every night of the week, but we share as many meals as possible. Breakfast this morning was one of them. We just, everything aligned. We all get up in the morning, everyone goes and exercises and does their thing. And we all happen to be home at the same time and sat and ate breakfast together.
Such a beautiful experience when you look at it as well.
It really is.
And there is so much scientific research around family meals, isn't there?
Absolutely.
And not just about children's relationship with food, but about their whole life skills.
Yes, absolutely.
The way
Conversation.
that Yes, the way that they absorb information at school,
Yes.
all of that is linked back to
Yeah.
family meals, which is crazy. I think
Yeah.
there's an amazing book about it. I can't remember the exact name of it, but there's a whole book about everything that's linked to family meals. I'll
Yeah.
have to try and
There's
find that.
even research that demonstrates that children who have eaten meals with their family through their lifetime or through parts of their lifetime, particularly teenagers, less likely to develop risky behaviours, drug taking, alcohol,
Yes.
drink driving, those kinds of things. So,
Yeah.
like you
And not to
said,
mention the mental health aspect of it as
the
well.
flow on effect is massive. And I know actually we've just recorded a podcast, Jane and I, about connection. We often, when we're talking about topics for the podcast, she was saying that she is seeing so many teenagers and young adults, late kind of tweens and teens, who can't make friends, they can't hold a
Mm.
conversation, and they can't, like older people in their 20s, unable to form relationships with
Yeah.
partners because they aren't able to communicate their needs, they aren't able to hold a conversation. And yeah, it's really sad. And I
It is.
really do feel like it comes back to the dinner table. I can
Mm.
remember a teacher saying to me once, when Jessie was really young, maybe prep, I can really tell that your son has been spoken with, not spoken to. And I
Mm.
thought, oh, isn't that interesting? Because I'm not, believe it or not, like a super chatty person. Like I'm not someone that
Yeah.
just yabbers onto my kids for the sake of yabbering on. I thought that's dinner time. We
Yeah.
have great conversations at dinner time, even when they were
Makes such
little
a big
bubbers.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even just the simple things as going around the table. I say to my kids, "What's two things that made your heart happy today?"
Yes.
Like
Beautiful.
simple things like
Yep.
that. And we all go around and we talk about it and they get excited to share. And it also is things that they might not have recognized in the moment,
Yeah.
but it forces them to recognize it at the dinner
Yeah,
table.
I love that. It's
So
beautiful.
it's, yeah, it's simple things like that that you can weave into the way that you would do it in your own family home.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just the impact of that on their entire life is,
100%.
yeah,
Absolutely amazing. And like we recognize and we address this throughout the program is life isn't always, things often go really pear-shaped at dinner time.
mm,
So we step people through strategies for what to do when things do go pear-shaped. Yeah, what's going on, the underlying causes behind, yeah, what's actually happening. Jane's very good at digging down
yeah,
into those kind of deep behavioral
yeah,
and connective kind of causes of a lot of dramas at dinner time.
mm,
But yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about. And
yeah.
we have a podcast called Raising Well-Nourished Kids that people can listen to. But
There's so much
the
information.
program is where you really get your hand held because we make ourselves available for questions as well, which is a
Yeah,
really, I think, probably the most valuable part of the program,
yeah,
to have
definitely.
access to us.
Especially
Because
because everybody goes through their own experience
and
with this.
everyone's unique. Exactly. Every
Yeah,
family dynamic is unique. We get all sorts of questions, things about what happens when, dad is not on the same page as mum. And
yeah,
there's so many variables. What happens when grandparents get involved? And there's just so many variables when it comes
yeah,
to feeding kids, and many roads lead to Rome as well. There's not one way of doing things. There's no
yeah,
perfect way for everyone. So yeah, that's why we
exactly.
built that into the course. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that this is probably something that you get very often. And if there's one strategy that you could share with this is if someone has a child who's on that beige diet, who's loving all the rice, the carbohydrates, the pastas, but with no sauce on it, no meat, and really rejecting that type of food, what's one little thing that they can do to start to form that beige diet?
Well, again,
So many, but
this
yeah.
is a really, there are so many things. The first thing that comes to mind, because as I said, I come from a very nutritional kind of
Yeah.
perspective, is there are many nutritional deficiencies that
Mm,
can affect the palate of children. Gut health is
yes.
massive in affecting the palate of children. Do you know your microbiome actually has an appetite for certain
Yes.
foods? And if your child is eating a lot of processed foods, it will grow a microbiome with bacteria that actually have a preference for
Yes.
processed food. And so then they're biologically driven to seek out those foods. We're all biologically driven to seek out high energy, refined carbohydrate. But things like zinc deficiency, iron deficiency, they need to be assessed by a practitioner preferably. But
Yeah.
they also play a massive role in appetite and the development of taste. And often there is just that absence of taste. There are behavioural reasons around that. Looking at sometimes those kinds of diets develop out of illness as well.
Mm.
So many things.
Yeah, so many
So,
things. I love that you touched on the deficiencies because I
yep,
think a lot of the time people don't realize that can be a huge
massive.
part of it. A lot of the time mums blame themselves
Yes.
for the entire process, but a lot of
Yeah.
it does come down to a deficiency as well, the gut bacteria.
Yes.
Yeah, so I love that you touched on that.
Yep.
Now, I truly believe that nourishing our family does start with nourishing ourselves first. And as a mum, we are the heart of the home. Do you believe our health and eating choices directly impact our children?
Without doubt.
Yeah.
100%. Because our kids don't do as we say, they do as we do. And you might not realize that now, but I can tell you with a 21-year-old and an almost 18-year-old, that is 100% the case. Like Jane actually interviewed my daughter, who was a very difficult child to raise. So she is feisty, she's headstrong, she was the tantrum queen. Oh my
I
goodness.
got one of
I
those. Yeah.
really wondered what hit me when she was born, or when she got to toddlerhood. Actually, she was a great baby, but everything changed at toddlerhood. But my daughter has pushed back on everything for the sake of pushing back. She's one of those personalities. And Jane actually interviewed her on the podcast recently
I have to
for
listen to it.
parents. Yeah, it was actually, we did it for parents with young kids who are just butting up against their kids with
Yeah.
and pushing back on healthy options and things like that. Because now she's full circle. She got into late teens and definitely really started to become a role model and valued health enormously. It's amazing what vanity will do to a teenage girl. She realised that if she ate heaps of sugar, her skin would break out. We always talk about, with educating kids in WellNourished in our program and on the podcast, it's about planting seeds and
Yeah.
helping them to make connections. But totally gone off tangent here.
Yeah, no, but no,
They
I know what you
definitely, like,
yeah,
he'd come around full circle, and
I
now she
do.
fully embraces and is, as much as she really, as I said, pushed back and was not happy with me as a teenager and as a child, she now really appreciates and values the fact that she was raised with valuing health.
Yeah.
And she can see
Yeah.
how her life has benefited enormously for that.
And they might not appreciate it
They
early
don't
on, but
appreciate it at the time. They
it's
never will.
there. But they do come around because
They
they
do.
embody what everything we do is what becomes normal to them
Yes.
in the future. And that's why, despite food, something that my daughter really struggled with was when I would go for my jogs. I love jogging.
Yep.
And she would stand at the door and say, "Please, mummy, don't go. I don't want you to
Mm.
go." And oh my gosh, it was so hard leaving. And there was a handful of times that I didn't go because I felt really bad. And then I said to myself, no, because I don't want her to do that
No,
later on. I
totally.
want her to see me prioritizing my own health and walking out, because I know not only is that going to become normal to her, she's going to embody that later on, but also when I come back, it means that I'm such a better mum to her. I'm more patient, I'm more happy, I'm more vibrant. I can play with her without getting frustrated. I am a better human because I've done that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
many aspects to it. But even
Yeah.
coming back to food as well, something that I personally found really helped me and my kids is that I would put food on the table, and there's so many things. I'd let them plate up their meals and all that stuff. But one of the biggest things I did is I would talk to them about the food that I was eating. So I would say, oh, I love broccoli.
Oh,
I love
so
this
important.
broccoli.
Yes.
And I would just let them watch me eat it. I would
Yes.
put no pressure on them to put it
Incredible.
on
Yep.
their plate.
Yep.
That in itself has transformed my kids'
Yeah.
relationship with food. Just
100%.
them watching me eat it. As simple as
100%.
that,
Yep.
it became normal to them.
Yeah,
And
as I
it's
said,
fun.
they do what you do, not what you say. So there's
Yes.
no point you
Yeah.
saying, you should eat this, you need to try, this is good for you. Kids don't care if something's
No.
healthy or good. One thing
Yes.
we always say is never, ever label food healthy or good, because a
Yes.
lot of kids, I know with my
Mix
daughter, she
something.
didn't want to be healthy or good. She'd never experienced illness in her life. So she
Yeah.
had no concept of what health actually was,
Mm.
like being unwell was. You can
Yeah.
refer to health if your children have experienced health
Yeah.
issues,
Yeah.
but
But it
without
means
that,
nothing to them.
totally, without that point of reference, it means
Mm.
nothing. But it's interesting you talking about the jogging though. One thing that I realized, actually, my daughter really reflected back to me was one day she walked in the house and I was sitting on the couch and she stopped and she said, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just having a rest. I'm sitting on the couch." "But there must be something wrong." And I
Yeah.
thought, oh my God, I have really done her a disservice because I've role modeled to her that resting and sitting on the couch is not something that mums do. And I
Yeah.
felt so sad. I felt like such a failure. It's one area,
Yeah.
as I said, I'm but not by a long stretch perfect as a parent,
Yeah.
but it really made me at that point really reassess my kids' understanding that I need rest, that
Yeah.
rest is important, that I need to role model that resting. And like I said before, fitting the mask to myself first. And like you said, I'm a better person for taking a few minutes out of the day
Yeah.
to sit mindfully, meditate, whatever kind of comes
Yeah.
at the time. I'm still a work in progress with that.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we are their whole world for
Yes,
such a long period of time. We are what creates their normal.
yes,
It's funny now as well. My daughter's in this phase where she imitates me meditating.
yeah,
So she'll imitate me, or if she knows that she's done something and I'm gone, Maya, what are you doing? She'll go into a funny meditating pose and it's part of her imitating me. And my husband Michael always laughs and he goes, I don't think she's taking that part of what you do seriously. And I actually said to him, no, I'm glad. I'm
yes,
glad that she does that because you know what? At the end of the day, whether she imitates it, whether she gets involved, it's normal to her.
yes,
And the fact that she can even make a joke out of
yeah,
it, to me, I feel like I'm proud of that because to her, I've made it something that's normal.
yes,
That's part of what I do. So hopefully later on, that's part of something that she does.
yeah,
So
beautiful.
simple things like that, just
Yeah.
letting them watch you do all the things
And
that nourishes you.
yeah, one thing that Jane talks about a lot is that our children can't regulate their own nervous systems. Their nervous systems are tethered to us, to the adults in their lives. So if our nervous system is dysregulated, our children's nervous system is going to be dysregulated. I wish I'd have known that sooner when I was younger.
Yeah.
I could never figure out why, when I was stressed or I was taking a phone call, that would be the time that my daughter would really act up. And it was because I was dysregulated at that point and her nervous system was feeding off of mine. And there's a lot of research, even in the area of neurodiversity and children, how important it is, particularly with children who struggle a lot to regulate their nervous system, how it is really important that the people around them have regulated nervous systems.
Yeah, I love that. And now, what's one quick tip that you can give to a mum who's currently in the trenches, feeling
Yep.
burnt out, fatigued, has no idea where to start? What's something that she can do to start prioritizing herself?
If it's within your means, get help. I was
Yes.
really crappy at asking for help,
Mm,
and it doesn't even have to be paid or hired help. It
mm,
can be, I think we all underestimate exactly what our kids are capable of.
yeah.
And I heard a quote the other day, not the other day, it was a couple of months ago, that rocked me to my core.
Mm,
And the person that was speaking, and I wish I could credit them, I can't remember who it was for the life of me. I've been trying to find who it was that said this because had such a profound impact on me. And they basically said that when we do things for our kids,
Mm.
we're robbing them of their own self-esteem, and we're actually building our own self-esteem.
God,
I was kind of like,
that is
holy hell.
wow.
Like, I have been I've always, not always, often guilty of
Yeah.
doing all the things for my kids.
Yes.
And I've realized as they've gotten older how I've actually disabled them in many ways.
Oh my
So,
God, that's really hit me too, because
yeah,
I'm
I just,
so guilty of that
you're
with my
actually
son.
contributing, you're building yourself up because you feel good because you can do
Yeah.
all the things, but you're actually robbing your kids of self-esteem. So I wish I'd have got my kids to do more things for me as well,
Yes.
because I think, as I said, we probably don't credit our kids with what it is they can actually do to contribute to the household. My daughter was a swimmer from a young age and competitive from a young age. So our days would start at 4 o'clock in the morning. She'd be in the pool at 5, home by 6:30, 6:45, because as I said, we lived a million miles from the pool. And it was literally like I would do everything. I'd have her breakfast ready, I'd have lunch packed. And I now look, sometimes I'll say to her, hey, you need to do this. And she'll have a fit about it. And I think, oh my God, it's because I just have completely
Yeah.
disabled her. She just expects that's something I'll do for her.
Yeah.
And I feel, look, I've really tried to turn that around. As the years have gone on, I've definitely got better. I've never
Mm.
rescued my kids. That's one thing I've been quite good with, is rescuing them through difficult situations. I've really
Mm.
allowed them to find their own solutions. Always supported them, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but that piece about chores and contributing. So yeah, if someone's in the trenches, I would really implore you to seek help. Don't be too proud to seek help. Ask for
Yeah.
help, whether it's from your partner or family members or hired help or your
Mm.
children.
Yes. And a lot of the time what I find with mums is they feel like someone is expected to make that time for them and to give them help. So then when they don't get it, they start getting bitter and feeling resentment. But a lot of the time they just simply haven't asked for it. And
Sure.
something that I'm so big on is you are your biggest advocate. You have to demand that time. You need to ask for it yourself. No one else can make that time for you. Because a lot of the time mums, they'll tend to wait around for someone
Yeah.
to offer.
Yeah.
And we just can't do that. It's
No.
not, yeah.
Yeah, I was very guilty of it. I don't
Yeah.
have too many regrets in my life, but I definitely regret not seeking support that I really needed when my kids were young. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Mm.
And just quickly, what are some of your non-negotiable daily health habits?
Look, my kids are older now, so those habits have improved
Yeah.
exponentially to what they were when they were little. But yeah, for me, my day always starts with a good long walk on the beach or
Mm,
along a coastline. I live in Queensland, so I'm really blessed to be able to get out in nature. So for
yeah.
me, I feel like nature is just one of the biggest nervous system regulators. Look, even when my kids were little, it would mean just me standing on the grass in bare feet while they jumped on the trampoline, getting some
Yeah.
sunshine on my body. So I suppose I have weaved that into my life over the years. It's just always looked very different. We all, even my kids, like we all are up early and we start our day with some sort of fitness routine. It looks differently
Mm,
for all of us.
yeah.
And look, not negotiables for me is having some level of preparedness for the day
Mm,
ahead. So I try perhaps the night before, I give a thought to, I might not officially meal plan as
mm,
such, but I always have an idea at the very latest in the morning, but usually the night before I'll think ahead to what we're going to be having for breakfast, more or less, doesn't have to be exact.
yeah.
And then what's going to be for dinner that night, because I'm busy, like I work long hours. My
Yeah.
kids, you think as they get older, it gets like less busy, but it's been busy.
There's a lot of driving, wouldn't
There's a
there?
lot of driving. My son's got his license now, so yeah, my life has completely changed.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's amazing how those hours of the day fill up.
Yeah, I can imagine. I love just the way that, just starting the day on the
Yeah.
right foot. And I think no
Yes.
matter how old your children are, there are these little things that we can do that are going to really change how the rest of our day plays out. But it does always start with the morning, I find. I tell mums simple things like hydrate before you caffeinate.
Yeah.
Don't drink coffee on an empty stomach. That in itself, have a big glass of water, rehydrate your body with water. Go outside, get some sunlight on your skin, even if you need to take your kids with you. That's totally fine. But these little things make such a big difference to our hormones, to our whole appetite, to everything.
Yeah. And I always say to people, they're the basics, they're the foundations for good health. You cannot out supplement or
Yes.
out meditate or out exercise. You cannot outdo any of those basics. There's no replacements for eating well consistently. It just
Yeah.
needs to be part of your routine, and you need to find ways. And as I said, it looks differently for everyone, but there needs to be some thought put into that, because it takes thought, it takes planning.
It does.
Much like it always fascinates me, because we put so much planning and thought into like kids' activities and social events and things, but then when it comes to the important things that sustain us on the day to day, often there's no planning, there's no thought, there's no.
Like a simple, nourishing meal that
Yeah,
your body needs. It
yeah,
needs. So many
absolutely.
mums are walking around with so much depletion,
Yes.
the nutrient deficiencies,
Yeah,
and then we blame those symptoms on #mum life,
totally.
brain fog, cognitive function. A lot of that comes down to an omega deficiency, not
Yeah.
#mum life.
No.
So we need to bring it back to the basics and make sure that we are giving our body the basics, like
Yeah.
simple meals and
Yes.
things like that.
Yeah.
Georgia, can you tell us a little bit more about your incredible program? So where can
Yep.
people find you? How can they join that amazing program you have?
Yeah. The website's wellnourished.com.au. We have hundreds of free recipes on the site, but we also have a membership called the WellNourished Family. And that is included in that membership are thousands of ad-free recipes, meal planning technology. We have an app so that everything is on the go, lots of educational pieces, masterclasses. We've got short courses that teach you how to meal prep in the simplest, easiest possible way. I mean, my whole mission in life is to help people to eat well consistently.
Yeah.
And I suppose the membership contains tools to help you find. It's very versatile. We provide a lot of things like done for you meal plans and so forth, but everything is customizable to suit individuals and families. As I said, we have Raising Nourished Kids, which is a program that you have lifetime access to that is everything I do is purpose driven, to be honest. But yeah, and I've also got a very short course called the Lunchbox Formula, because of that whole
Yeah.
piece of people asking about how. I mean, I have packed over 5,000 lunchboxes in my lifetime. I know
Yeah.
how to do it. I've got it down to a fine art. So that course is me sharing everything that I know about lunchbox packing and, what to pack when you have nothing prepared. And it goes through all of the different scenarios. So yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
that's me in a
That's amazing.
nutshell.
We'll share all of that in the show notes so you can
Yep.
find Georgia and all her amazing resources. Georgia, thank you so much for all that incredible knowledge that you've shared with us. I know so many people will walk away with so much from this
Oh, good.
episode.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Georgia. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this conversation has inspired you to live your healthiest, happiest life. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in next week. Bye for now.